is really, really, really cold outside, like the first day of snow, but my heart is so warm because Fantastic Beasts was so good, and I'm so grateful for that. So let's talk about it. I will be doing a non-spoilery section for this video and then get into a huge spoiler-filled discussion because I have so many thoughts and feelings and things about the movie that I want to discuss with all of you who have seen it. So don't worry, I will give you fair warning when spoilers are coming. But if you are planning to stay through the whole video, I have a feeling this is going to be a long one. So I'd grab a cup of coffee like I have here and get comfy. Let's talk about our expectations for Fantastic Beasts. I think a lot of fans were really super pumped when they announced that they were making a Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them film. Originally we were like kind of confused, like this little tiny handbook is turned into a movie, and the news kind of trickled out to us and we got more and more excited, and then trailers came and things looked great. And then Cursed Child dropped. I still haven't read Cursed Child personally, but I know many people were disappointed in Cursed Child, and a lot of people realized this isn't completely Joe's work. Because of Cursed Child, a lot of people were either worried, not anticipating, or not even planning on going to see Fantastic Beasts. I implore you, if Cursed Child discouraged you from going to see Fantastic Beasts, turn around, do a 180, and head right to a movie theater, because this movie was so great, and this was so in the style of J.K. Rowling. And this is a work penned by Joe, and I truly believe that. I know some people are like, oh, we're being told it was written by her. I truly believe this is Joe's work. And there are reasons why that even the flaws you can see are kind of the work of a new screenwriter. She's never written for film before, and so the flaws that I do see are because she's adjusting from a medium where you have expansive room to explain everything in books, especially a 7-book series, to this new medium that is shorter and condensed and visual, and it changes things. So, Fantastic Beasts is our foyer into the Harry Potter prequels. This film starts with newspaper reels popping up on the screen. You are seeing a huge amount of information being thrust at you. And these articles are all talking about the rise, the ascent, and the power that is being gained by Grindelwald. We have Newt bringing his suitcase full of Fantastic Beasts to America. We have this story plot going on. Newt and his Fantastic Beasts coming to America. Then, while we are in New York City, we have this dark, weird force wreaking terror upon New York City. And these are two very important things that almost don't fit together, but they have to make Fantastic Beasts. And what we've been promised, plus what the title is, plus what the story we are overarchingly telling over the course of 5 films is. I had high expectations after seeing the trailer. I thought it looked beautiful. I thought the plot was engaging. I was excited. And more than excited, I expected a lot because this is Joe's work. This is David Yates, who directed my favorite of the Harry Potter films. And so I had a lot of high hopes. I love Eddie Raymond. I liked the cast. I liked the humor I saw in the trailer. I had high hopes. My expectations were not met. No, they were exceeded. This movie was so good. Here's the thing. In a way, and do not take this the wrong way, but in a way, this was better than the Harry Potter films. Some of the Harry Potter films just aren't what I want them to be, and they especially don't have this huge rewatchability aspect for me. While the books have the biggest rereadability for me, I've read them more times than any other book in the entire world. This was written to be a movie though, not a book, and it's not an adaptation, and because of that, it's a richer movie than the Harry Potters were. Because all of the Harry Potter movies were missing things. Little things, big things, things that we wanted, things that were important. A lot of people complain about the pacing. I think the pacing was great. I think it slowed us into this world that we are being reintroduced to. I thought it was cool. We were meeting these new characters for the first time. I thought the pacing was slow when it is explaining things so that we weren't overwhelmed by information, and then picked up as we got used to things and the plot progressed, and I thought it was well done. The CGI, while at times a little awkward, was for the most part absolutely stunning. I love the portrayal of the beasts. Just loved it. I liked the look of 1920s New York City. I loved the acting as well. I think Newt was portrayed wonderfully, especially his awkwardness, especially his likability, especially his Hufflepuff traits. He's kind and compassionate and loving. I think that Newt is the highlight of this film. Not my favorite part, but the highlight. You will fall in love with Newt Scamander. I think a lot of the chemistry between characters is portrayed really well. I love our No-Maj, our Muggle, Jacob Kowalski, and I love his dynamic with Newt. And I love his dynamic with Queenie. And I love Queenie's dynamic with her sister Tina. And I love Tina's dynamic with Newt. And everyone just had these wonderful pieces of chemistry that fit together so well. And that's exactly the kind of building blocks we need and Lego pieces we need to build forward moving into a future franchise, because this is just the start. This is just the beginning. I loved seeing New York City. I loved seeing the American side of the wizarding world. I liked seeing the past of the wizarding world, where different things are at the forefront of their minds and different concerns are guiding the story. And I like seeing adults being wizards, not kids in school. They're out in the real world, they're developing their career and figuring out what they want with their lives. That's really cool, because I think that's where a lot of the Harry Potter fandom is in their lives right now. At least the fandom that grew up with the books. So it's really cool to have grown with the books and now be able to identify with the new franchise. I really, really appreciate that. Basically, go see this movie. It's absolutely fantastic. It captures the magic in a new way. It is not Harry Potter, but it is the wizarding world, and it is that WB logo coming up, and that music that we are so attached to coming up, and that emotion that flutters in our heart when the movie starts. And I'm just so happy to get a new story within the wizarding world. And it's not the prequel I wanted. I wanted the Marauders era story. But honestly, I think I'm enjoying this more than I would have enjoyed the Marauders era prequel. I'm not saying I don't want that. I still really want that. Essentially, go watch the movie. I loved it so much. I hope you do too. Now let's get into the spoilery section. You guys, Newt is a freaking master magician. I don't care what happened at Hogwarts. I don't care that he was expelled. Wow, this guy is so good. Think of how great a piece of magic Hermione's expanding purse was when she could dump anything into it, and that expanding charm was huge. Then it's a hard piece of magic. And now know that Newt Scamander has a zoo with different sections full of a bunch of different beasts that he can walk around in and create potions and remedies and feed his creatures and host them in their own separate habitats where they have room to roam. And he created this expanding charm of a zoo within a briefcase. That is one hell of a piece of magic. He is so talented. Newt is such a kind human. He is rehabilitating all of these animals. He's such a wonderful human being. He is the epitome of a Hufflepuff. I've always said that Hufflepuffs are the best house because they're the kind of ideals everyone should strive to be. They are kind and loyal and compassionate and just purely, genuinely wonderful people. And that is the epitome of what Newt Scamander is. It's no surprise he was a Hufflepuff. So one piece we have here is a huge political commentary on America. Let's talk about this execution system we've got going on. We have this room where they take out your happy memories and you get to watch them and be sucked into the best moments of your life while you're sitting in a metal chair that burns/eats you alive. How inhumane is that, first of all? Second of all, the fact that America has the death penalty and they're willing to use it and throw it around for very little cause, exploration, and trial. It's very telling of how people view America. Not just Wizarding America, but this is a political statement. The ending just felt too convenient. The cleanup seemed like it was too easy. The obliviate the entire city thing worked out really conveniently. Doesn't work for me. Either they're gonna go back to this and something's gonna slip through the cracks, or this is a huge flaw in my book. We also have this underlying huge conversation about No-Majs, especially the Second Salem. The Second Salem group is this group of radical people who are awfully and profoundly against wizarding kind. Led by crazy Mary Lou, who gives these protests, houses these orphans. She's abusive to these orphans, and thus we have another dark story plot come out of that. Plot filled with abuse, of kind of suppressing who you truly are. And this leads to corrupt people being able to manipulate vulnerable people, and then outbursts that lead to violence. And that's kind of the problem with the two just disjointed stories, is you have the obscurists that are taking rampage over this world become such a bigger, scarier threat to the secrecy of wizarding kind, which has suddenly become so much more important because of the Salem. And this seems so much more important than the animals that are getting out. And so the stakes aren't at an equal playing field, and that's where we get this disconnect. I think it's important to have them both. I don't think it was that big of a deal. I think that the Fantastic Beasts are there for the light and comic and happiness and the world building, and the dark story is there to bring us into the future, because behind all these obscurists we have Dear Grindelwald. First scene, newspapers are popping up. Grindelwald's name is everywhere. We suddenly know, before this movie starts, that this entire franchise is going to be about Grindelwald. It's about Newt and Grindelwald. And immediately, things just clicked in my head. Oh my gosh, they casted Johnny Depp way before we thought they did. The events of Grindelwald, if you do recall, directly correlate to the ending of Harry Potter. Albus, Grindelwald, a thing. Best friends, possibly lovers, and at this point I don't know if Grindelwald has the Elder Wand or not. We're in 1926, so we are about 19 years away from the epic Dumbledore-Grindelwald duel. So it's possible he already has the Elder Wand, it's possible he doesn't. I'm not really too clear on when he got the Elder Wand. Thought about this long and hard. Dumbledore's sister had to have been an obscurist. That had to have been what happened, the cause of her explosion. A person who is close to the obscurist can calm them down, talk them down. That's why Aberforth, the one who could always calm down Ariana. At first, it made no sense to me, and the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. She was an obscurist, and I suddenly think that's why he's in America, and I think that's suddenly why he's interested in the obscurists, because the Second Coming has created obscurists by making people feel like they have to oppress their magical abilities, thus creating obscurists. God, imagine how bad that would have been, like, during the Salem witch trials. We have these people who are anti-magic, but then we have Grindelwald, who is a supremacist who thinks that the Muggles are suppressing the wizard kind and that the wizards should be ruling them. His whole thing was to take down the Statute of Secrecy and to rule among the Muggles, as they have these powers that the Muggles do not, and it's for the greater good. For a long time, I thought Graves was a supporter of Grindelwald, not Grindelwald himself. He gives a little Deathly Hallows necklace, and I'm like, Grindelwald, it's Grindelwald. We already knew it was Grindelwald, but Grindelwald. Because if you recall, the Deathly Hallows was, one, the hunt for the Hollows, but also Grindelwald's mark. Newt, by the end of the movie, figured out what we had all already figured out, and that Grindelwald was in disguise, and the Magical Congress of the United States locks him up. We know that's not going to last. He breaks out and makes his way to France, where we pick up for movie 2. Albus and Grindelwald met in 1899 when the boys were about 16, 17 years old. They met in Godric's Hollow. Of course, we know this. Grindelwald had already been expelled from Durmstrang. Dumbledore was taking care of his sister, who was suppressing her magical powers. They began discussing the greater good, the hunt for the Hallows, the escaping of death. So that was in the past. Now we're in the 1926, and that's what's happening right now. And that makes Dumbledore 45 and Grindelwald 43 when this event is happening. So we have so much time to explore Grindelwald's rise to power, Newt and Grindelwald's clear, in my opinion, was going to be a clear defiance. Think about Lily and James, thrice defied Lord Voldemort. I think that Newt is going to have this defying Grindelwald moment where they kind of are against each other. He's already had this moment with Grindelwald where he took down the disguise. So now he has officially defied Grindelwald, and he is in this now, guys. We have 1945, where the massive, epic, legendary Albus versus Grindelwald duel takes place. We have all this time. We can skip years. We don't have to. We have this time to rise Grindelwald. Since Dumbledore and Newt had this relationship, as was hinted at in the movies, it's not a Harry Dumbledore relationship, but it's definitely a relationship. Newt, I feel like, is going to push the story along to where Dumbledore's gonna finally get back involved. I'd also like to point out something. Newt Scamander goes to New York City in 1926, December of 1926. Do you know what happened in December of 1926? Specifically on December 31st of 1926. What was it? Oh yeah! A guy named Tom Riddle was born. Yes! At the very time that the events of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is going on, Lord Voldemort is becoming a human being out into this world. I feel like that's kind of specific and not really a coincidence. That could just be me, but it feels like that's important. I'm not saying this is Voldemort's story, but that's more places they can take the story, and that's more potential. Feels like more than just a coincidence that Grindelwald is everywhere in this, even though these are Newt's movies. There's just so much that could happen, and I'm so excited to see where they take this, especially with Grindelwald's ascent to power, how Newt plays a part in this, because we don't really know yet. And knowing that Graves is actually Grindelwald, who has infiltrated the magical congregants of the United States, is crazy. But you know what else is crazy? Is reimagining one of the best lines. When Graves turns to Newt, reading his file, and says, "I wonder what makes Albus Dumbledore so fond of you, Mr. Scamander." Hey-o! You're interested. Because you guys kind of have a history. By kinda, I mean it's a kinda big one. So anyways, if you couldn't tell, I really love this movie. Not just because it was great, but mostly because I'm really excited to see the Dumbledore, Grindelwald, Newt story continue. If you've seen Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, you should comment down below and let me know if you loved it. I hope you did. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I will see you in the next video. Bye!